NFL Championship weekend that we're going to get into right now and get Casey's thoughts on it. But what we want to start off with, Casey Joyner, as we do, Tampa Bay and Kansas City. Is there any historical significance between these two teams? I can't think of a matchup that these two teams have ever had other than the Brady versus Reed rematch from when the Eagles made it. But anything, you're a historical guy. Anything Tampa Bay, Kansas City worthy? Nothing? I can't think of anything. Not with Tampa Bay anyway.
No, I can't. And this may be the best matchup of quarterbacks in Super Bowl history, and that's saying something. And that's not. I don't think that's a. I don't think that's hyperbole. I think if you really look even at the historical, there's been some great matchups. Even the first Super Bowl, even Green Bay, Kansas City had two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I just don't think you've ever had one that has. If Mahomes is what we all think he is, this is the two greatest quarterbacks in NFL history playing.
You'll appreciate this. Have you seen the video of The Rock and Hollywood Hogan at WrestleMania staring at each other, and they're like Brady and Mahomes, like, hey, this is our moment, but I'm passing it over to you, man.
That is, and if the Super Bowl is anywhere as good as that match was, we're going to be entertained.
Well, we were entertained yesterday. It was a great game. Let's start with your thoughts on what Tampa Bay was able to do defensively that made Rodgers and that Green Bay offense look out of sync all day.
I thought that Green Bay, I think that they gave up on the running game a whole lot quicker than they should have. Green Bay ran the ball 2 times on their first drive, and then 9 of their next 10 plays were on the next drives. 9 of their next 10 plays were passing plays. Al Davis used to say, you don't stop us by your scheme, you stop us by stopping us. In other words, if you play a certain type of scheme, we're not necessarily just going to let you take us out of our game plan just because, hey, you put certain players in certain places. You're going to have to stop us. They ran the ball 2 times on the first drive, did Green Bay. They got 3 rushing yards, and I think they said, well, Tampa Bay is going to stop our running game. We need to throw the ball. I don't think you can give up on the ground game that easy because that's who Green Bay was. Inside zone, outside zone, a lot of power running the ball, and then throw the ball over the top. And when they got out of that game plan, I think that was funny because LaFleur's taking a lot of grief for all the other things. I think he needs to take grief for the fact that you gave up on your own game. You just allowed it to go. You didn't make them stop you. You just threw in the towel on it.
With that being said, what'd you think about Todd Bowles and his performance? It kind of goes, almost conflicts you a little bit. But I thought, he did have an impressive day at the office.
Oh, mind you, this is not to take anything away from Todd Bowles. This is to take away nothing because the running game is not as easy to stop. People like to think like you just put the extra guy in the box and, hey, you stop the running game. Well, as Troy Aikman said earlier this year, he said, if that would have been the case, Emmitt Smith would have never rushed for a yard. So the thing is look at Devontae Adams. 15 targets. He's the best receiver in the NFL. 15 targets, 9 receptions for 67 yards. I even asked my son, who was ever getting later in the game, like, how many targets do you think Adams has? I pulled up NFL GSIS and said, I was surprised to see that he had 12 targets because it was a quiet game. He's only catching, again, 9 for 67, only getting 7.4 yards per reception. When you can take the top receiver in the NFL, a guy who's capable of tearing defenses apart and say, fine, we're just going to make him a dink and dunk receiver. That speaks really well for what Todd Bowles did.
Yeah, and they were able to get to Rodgers a lot. I mean, it just seemed like they were all over him all day long. Every time they needed a big play, they got a set. Every time Green Bay needed a big play or seemed like they had a shot, there was a set. I mean, they get him like 8 times yesterday. It was just, they had him it was just a really aggressive defense from Bowles.
It was, and that's the thing. He doesn't mind being aggressive. And in fact, the thing you think about it, you're facing the Packers running game, one of the best in the league. You're facing Rodgers, the MVP. You're facing Devontae Adams, the best receiver in the league. Usually a lot of teams would be like, let's just make sure we don't get beat over the top. They were blitzing. They were being as aggressive as they could be. They got 8 quarterback hits too. And the Packers, when they lost Bakhtiari, that was – you can make up for offensive line injuries because you can coach up the offensive line. That's a position you can coach up, and it's a position that you can do a lot of creative things offensively to shore up. You can chip a tight end, chip running backs, things of that nature. Didn't matter. They were able to make sure and say, we're going to get you in one-on-one pass blocking matchups, and we're going to be very aggressive against that. And it looked like Rodgers he wasn't rattled. He was uncomfortable. And it's saying something if you can get him uncomfortable this year.
How should we view not Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady right now? He's throwing all these interceptions. The defense is holding him in there. But at the same time, for example, the first drive, third down after third down after third down. He's completing it, and they're winning football games, and that resulted in a touchdown. So, obviously this isn't the Tom Brady that we are used to seeing, but, how do we grade this thing? He continues to win.
I think a lot of in those interceptions, because the interceptions sometimes, I used to have a metric called bad decision rate, and he's one of the reasons I actually don't track bad decision rates anymore, because his bad decision rates would be, he would have a bad decision was when you made a quarterback made a mental error that led to a turnover opportunity. So you did something mentally that gave the other team a chance for a pick, not where you just throw up a jump pass and they go intercept it, but where you actually misreading a defense, something of that nature. He would get like his bad decision rate would be like 0.05%, one out of every 200 passes. He'd have like 2 bad decisions all year. When I started doing it, you had Ben Roethlisberger have like a 5% bad decision rate. By the time I stopped doing this metric a couple years ago, other teams had mimicked what Brady was and got down to that level. Brady, I think now, if I were to grade his tapes, he would probably have a bad decision rate about 1%. Okay, so 1 out of every 100 passes. You can still over physical as receivers and go for interceptions that way. So I don't think he's making errors in that sense. But I do think that he is being as aggressive as his offense wants him to be. And when that's the case, you're going to put up some passes that are going to be potentially be intercepted. Although I will say I probably would grade that one pass where the blitz came through and he's throwing off his back foot and it was an air ball. And you could see that Evans thought it was going to go deeper and the cornerback could judge it better. I don't know. I might call that a bad decision because you really shouldn't throw against pressure that much. And you probably should have taken the sack. But that's about the only thing where I'd say, boy, there were some mistakes he made there because he was making a lot of good reads all game.
Yeah, and obviously, Brady, 3 picks in the game. You don't win games in the playoffs at this level. Why were they able to overcome that?
Well, first off, because Green Bay's defensive coordinator needs to join. It was the second. I might call that defense that they had at the end of the first half. That was, the game of the Jets where the Jets played that kind of man coverage at the end of the game against the Raiders. I think it was like week 12, week 13, and then the Raiders won the game. That stood as the worst, and that cost that defensive coordinator's job, cost Greg Williams his job. This was a horrible play, and you could see afterwards that LaFleur said, well, I wouldn't have, that's not the best defense to be in that situation. And you think, head coach, you ought to be able to say that. And it says that the Packers kind of have I think what I've been reading between the lines is that their defensive coordinator is there because they don't necessarily want him there. The head coach might want a different defensive coordinator, but the team wants him there. They have a kind of committee approach on things there. So that might be that kind of a situation. But if you're looking at Green Bay, you're saying you gave up that situation. You had the scoop score. You gave up too many of those sorts of plays. And again, why are you? And the big thing after the game, why are you not going for it on 4th down? Even Rodgers thought they were going to go for it on 4th down. So I think a lot of why they lost that game is because the reason that Mike McCarthy was trending after it's because Green Bay fans thought this is a return to Mike McCarthy's ways.
How do you see the relationship between Tom Brady and Bruce Arians? Because it's so interesting to me. It's like in the beginning they were somewhat button heads, and now they kind of figured out a flow. I don't know. I just think those two together, it's so unique.
It's kind of like you look at rock bands and things, and a lot of times you hear about classic rock bands, and they would have fights between the top people, and because they fought, they actually made better music. And when they split those, and they split the creative people apart, their music was good, but not quite as good. I think that's what that is. I don't think Brady minds if the coach says, "Hey, you made a mistake." If Brady made the mistake, as long as the coach is going to give Brady the creativity to say, okay, you can do more. In fact, remember back in the day, Roger Staubach, I'll go back old school here. Roger Staubach, when he retired from the Cowboys in '79, he had said, I want to call some of the plays. And Tom Landry, the head coach, I'm not going to let you do it. I call the plays. You're not going to do it. There was that kind of creativity. And I think that's what Brady felt in New England was, I can't make that kind of contribution to the team. And now he's able to make that kind of contribution. So he looks at it and says, fine, my coach calls me out when I make a mistake. Fine, I made a mistake. I'm a man. I can take this, but I get to have more say-so over what we do on offense. So he feels like I can control the dynamic here. So I think it's where they push each other kind of dynamic that actually gets better productivity, I think, that Brady would have got if he had stayed in New England.
Let's get your take on LaFleur's decision to kick the field goal there. And it seems like everybody is criticizing him. Are we just being reactionary, or was that legitimately a poor decision?
I think when coaches start thinking, if I remember correctly, I saw yesterday that they said that gave them a 2% extra chance to win. And I remember what Bill James used to say about batting averages. Somebody'd have like a 310 batting average, another guy have a 290. So that guy's a 310 batting average, and Bill would point out it's 2 percentage points. That means it's it's 2 hits out of every 100 at bats. You need to have a large volume of at bats to actually make that worth something. And even then, who knows how much it's actually worth? He knew that was an overvalued stat. And I look at that and go, well, that's that situation. Fine, it says you got a 2% better chance, but you're also trusting your defense, where you've got Kevin King having one of the worst coverage performances in conference championship history. You can't stop the run very well. Brady's playing very well. You've got a lot of things going on with this. And I just look at it and go, this is not, and you're going to trust your defense versus trusting the MVP, Devontae Adams, your running game. I just can't see that being the case. And again, Rodgers he said that's why I didn't scramble, because I thought we were going to have 4 downs.
Well, obviously, Rodgers doesn't seem too happy. To the point where you don't know, have we seen him in a Green Bay uniform for the last time?
Green Bay, I hope they will learn the lesson with Favre, and that they got Rodgers and things, but how do you handle that situation? If Rodgers wants out, people are saying he can't leave. They're saying the same thing about Deshaun Watson. It looks like he's going to be able to get out of Houston. If he went to the press and said, I want out, and I've been a legend with this team, and you need to let me go because I want to go somewhere else, I think the fan base would be so mad at Green Bay management that he could probably force their hand if he wanted to. What people are saying, though, is that it sounds like what he wants them to do is go all in. Because they go and say, hey, let's draft Love. Let's draft for the future. He's like, we can win a Super Bowl today. Give me as much help as we can get right now, and we can get a Super Bowl. But if you keep trying to build for the long term, stop doing that. Go in right now today and get this, and then you can build from there. But let's not get away from who we are. And I think he thinks they're not going to be as aggressive as they should be. And if they're not, I think he may try and get his way out of town, which, again, I think he could force if he wanted to.
That would be really interesting. I want to tie that field goal conversation into the next game, but it was Buffalo versus Kansas City, because Sean McDermott was getting a little bit of heat as well for going for some field goals. Now, I actually don't mind it. I know what most think, which is you got to outscore the Chiefs to beat the Chiefs, and they're so explosive. And I'm not disagreeing with that. I think there's value in that. But I also can see it from this way. You need to stay involved as much as possible. If you can get points against this team, just get as many points as possible until you need to throw that haymaker. Unfortunately, they never got a chance to, but I don't hate it as much as others did, I should say.
I can understand certain times, like if it gets you from 17 down to 14, where you get from 3 possessions down to 2, I totally get that. It makes sense at some point because you've got to get that third possession in there somewhere. I can understand it at a certain case. And the analytics people, I'm for the be aggressive, go for it on 4th down, don't punt on 4th down. If you're at midfield, things of that nature, I'm of that mindset. I think there's enough reasons for it. But I think the analytics people, when they say, hey, pass the ball more often, or hey, go for it, they don't look at it's a risk reward thing. And when you get overall, it probably tends to be better, but if it doesn't work out, the risk can cost you big time. If you're going to take risky plays on 1st down, guess what? You're going to be in 2nd and long if it doesn't work, and that's a bad place to be. And if you don't kick the field goals and you go for it, it's like going for 2 and things. If you don't make those plays, now you're behind the 8 ball. I think he needed to be a bit more aggressive than he was. I think he was a little too conservative on things. But then again, they're also looking at it saying, I think they realized that Kansas City had a defensive game plan that really slowed them down, because without Beasley, we find out now he had a broken fibula, and he's playing 3 games. He's Jack Youngblood of today,
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, and he's doing that, so I think they realized, hey, they're a one-trick pony. All they got is Diggs, and that's it.
Well, that game, I wonder, does that show... I don't know. Does that tell you? The Bills, I thought, all year long, what got them there was they were an aggressive team. They were always and then I felt like the moment maybe was a little big for them, but does it just show the separation between where Kansas City is and the next team, which I guess is Buffalo?
It's amazing that Buffalo said in the first game, they did this game too, they said, we're going to play 2 high coverage, either cover 2 or cover 4. We're going to sit back here with 2 safeties. We're going to invite you to run the ball. Early in the year, Kansas City ran the ball. I think if they would have had the same personnel this game, they would have run the ball. But I think Edwards-Helaire played 32 snaps, just under 50% of the snaps. But I think they knew he's coming off being questionable. We don't want to ground and pound with him because we just don't know. Bell's out. We've got Williams. So we're our 3rd string running back. We really don't want to lean on him. So they're going to invite us to pass. Fine, we're going to throw it. You're sitting back in cover 2, and Mahomes is tearing you apart. It's a defense that's designed to stop these passes, and Mahomes is just hitting every 10-yard completion that he wants. It's the scary thing about Kansas City is that you can play a defense that says we should be able to stop you. They just out-execute you and do it anyway. So that's the scary thing about them. And Buffalo had more limited paths to success. And I do wonder about Josh Allen. He did seem to get rattled. I saw some shades of Lamar Jackson where it's a playoff game and he's starting to get rattled enough to where he's throwing a ball at somebody and things of that nature. And you could see it all game. He was just like, this is making me mad. Well, do something about it, because right now it looks like you're a more limited quarterback than what you were all season. I don't understand why they were trying planned runs with him either. They were letting him scramble, but they weren't doing a lot of planned runs. And I think that would have been something that would have thrown Kansas City a curveball.
Not to look too big picture, but Eric Fisher did go down with an Achilles injury. How big is that for this Kansas City Chiefs team moving forward, especially because we brought up that pass rush from Tampa Bay?
It's a pass rush. It's going to be very big for – the thing is, I think that this is going to be a very similar thing where Tampa Bay is going to say we don't have to play single high coverage. We won't play cover 1 and cover 3. We'll sit back in cover 2 and cover 4 against you. We don't need to come up and stop the run, because I think Kansas City's not going to run the ball very much in the Super Bowl. I think they're going to want to throw the football. And as they showed, they can do it if you get that type of coverage. But the point is, Buffalo couldn't get any kind of a pass rush, and I think Tampa Bay can. I think that Kansas City is going to have to creatively play call their pass blocking. I think you have to get very creative. Now, they can do it, and they're very good at doing it, but you're going to lose some one-on-one matchups. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tampa Bay do a lot of rushing 5 in that contest, because that old coaching adage to where if you can't pass block, we'll make you block one-on-ones as often as possible. I think Tampa Bay will do a lot of that. So it's going to be an aggressive front versus what Kansas City could do to counterpunch that. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes.
All right, we'll have more on the Super Bowl with KC Joyner. There's a look back at championship weekend. There's just a thought on the Super Bowl coming up, which of course is 2 weeks. You can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. But a fun championship weekend. Tampa Bay, Kansas City, Brady, Mahomes, Andy Reid, Bruce Arians, a couple Philly guys there. Arians coached at Temple, of course, and Andy was in Philadelphia for a while. So, Casey, we look forward to previewing that matchup with you. And as always, great stuff.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.